You're like perfect timing. Right when I did it. Yeah, it came from London like the day before. Wednesday. Okay, I see it, yeah, I got it, yeah, I didn't print this one out, when did you send it? On Wednesday, right, the day right before we started. I'm gonna see them. Oh, yeah. On my. Pick it up, man. That's it.
Okay, y'all ready to call this meeting back to order? Back to order and get started. So I'll turn everything back over to you, Miss Lisa, and we'll go from there.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to touch on some of the things we talked about yesterday, just to make sure we're tracking and to see if there's any other discussion. But we did talk about included in this budget is proposed full-time prosecutor position. So we'll continue with that. We also looked at making the Parks and Rec programmer position. It was a temporary position, so we're looking at making that full-time. One of the things, I know we had some discussion about the solid waste collection fee, and I spoke to Russ and Rhonda this morning. I would like to take a little bit more time to study that and bring you back some numbers at the next finance committee meeting. So we'll bring that back to you for a little bit further discussion. And it also looks like everyone was supportive of a minimum $15 per hour as a starting pay, and including an 8% bucket for distribution for the employees for salary adjustment.
And Lisa, I'd like to make an amendment to that, if I could, or suggest an amendment.
Okay.
I think we were all comfortable with moving everyone below 15 to 15 before we do anything with increases. And I would suggest that we move the increase from 8% to 10%. And the rationale being that I know technically you have to fund it in the budget as a full year of use of salary. And so technically we would be appear to pull money from fund balance into the budget to fund that. But the actual facts are that you're going to have enough jobs not filled during the year that we don't pull money from, that you'll never pull from the fund balance in actuality. So I'd rather see the salary increase be 10% of COLA merit combination be 10 instead of 8.
And I agree. I think it's our lower entry people that need the higher percentage to bring them up. But I had one person say they really didn't need a raise. And I think y'all need a raise. Y'all need to be recognized for the work you do. This is the best team I've ever worked with. So appreciate y'all.
And I obviously, I think I think that's well said, Bob, that we want to leave it up to department heads. They know where the greater needs are. And obviously, ideally, you're going to target those that have the greatest need, and somewhere along the line, graduate what you're doing, much like what you talked about yesterday, Chief. And everybody does that. I think it's going to be a big win.
Just to clarify that if we're talking about a 10% bucket, then that doesn't mean necessarily 10% across the board. There
Correct.
could be situations where you're starting your bottom salary is higher, which would require a higher percentage, and then the higher salaries make it a little. So,
Correct.
okay.
And just so, Rhonda, correct me if I'm incorrect, but I think this will only cost, between the two things, it'll cost about $400,000. So it's not like we're breaking the bank here, and that's all you really got to cover out of people not being here.
Well, I'll just make a comment since we're talking about it openly. We do have the best staff of any municipality or county around here. And they are the ones who provide the services to our citizens. And we need to demonstrate our support of them, but also pay them fairly, give them a fair wage, because competitiveness in the region with municipalities and counties, it's going to be very challenging to retain our staff in this market. And I think this shows them that we're committed to them for the future, and hopefully they receive that well, and then that can translate into better services moving forward. So thank you.
Let me try to understand what you're saying, Terry.
we were talking about an 8%, you're gonna take it to 10%. And the department head would, decide how they're gonna dole that out to their employees. As Bob said, we want to look out for the lower level employees first.
Yeah.
Okay, and, so you feel that'll be sufficient, $400,000 to cover it?
To cover the extra 2% and the move to get everybody to 15 first,
Minimum.
minimum 15 first, then 10%, the 2%, the extra 2% on top of that would cost 400.
Well, that's good. I mean, that sounds good because, I think we've all been concerned a long time for the lower level employees who do grunt work and hard work and, certainly, even the top employees, everybody needs a raise, but there's a bunch of them on the bottom that, we just need to take them up as hard as we can get because there's a problem retaining people. I think we're losing some people here and there too, with street departments and the Department of Recreation. Department. And everybody's looking for big money now. It's an inflationary period and what they were getting 3 or 4 years ago, just not right now.
Agreed.
I agree with that.
This is a great move and our employees really deserve this and I think this is a great step forward.
Yeah, we won't need a motion. What we'll do, Mr. Mayor, is we'll go back and recalculate some numbers and when we bring the budget back to you for first reading, it will include those changes.
When you do that, Miss Lisa, do you mind including a vacancy rate or kind of what Councilman Jenkins was talking about of how that vacancy rate, even though we're not budgeting it, but just as a side note, how it may actually fund itself through vacancy. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Lisa Douglas.
Okay.
Question for you. So after we were here yesterday, I went back, calculated numbers, I think you all asked me, implemented, when the police department started implementing our fee structure, the 8% would bring us to the full 100% of what we started last year. And I did say, yes. When I went back, if you were short on $92,335. However, if 10% was going to be offered for across the board, that would bring us up to 100% of what we were at. That probably is as well, or that is people that are $15 hour employees.
So everybody.
Everybody.
Fair enough, thank you.
No, the two steps is what I was talking about. First step, anyone who's below $15 an hour goes to $15 an hour. So now the lowest paid person we have is 15, and then the 10% is added on top of that.
Thank you.
And you would say 10% up to the highest paid employee.
The bucket includes all of the employees. I don't think it will be distributed 10% to equally at the higher rank as it is at the lower rank. The effort is to have department heads move their numbers around to help those in greatest need more.
Yeah, I think we've done the COLAs so long, the uppers start running away with it. And the lowers are basically not.
And that's
getting
my,
much.
and that's my concern, even about an 8% increase across the board. We got people making $14, $15 an hour, making 20, 25, 30, 35, $40,000. 8% is more than it 8% doesn't get it done. And 10% would obviously be better. You're talking about employees in this economy, in this community, making 80, 90, 100, 120, 130, $170,000 a year. Are we really saying to our taxpayers that they need a 10% increase in salary? I don't think they want to send that.
No, we made that clear.
Well,
It goes as a greater percentage at the lower ranks. And I think from what I heard from all the directors, that's what they wanted to do.
so that's how you would pay for going from 8 to 10. Because the folks making 80, 90, 100,000 plus, maybe their increase 2%, 3%, 4%. I would pay for a lot of bringing people that need the money to the 10% increase.
I agree.
let me bring up something with the police department. Your dispatchers, are any of them below $15?
Yes, but if we do this, re-implement this at 10%, they'll bring them up to the new pay structure to equal us.
Yeah.
I'll say this, and I'm not trying to be disrespectful in any way, shape, or form, but, our counterparts in high-level positions around the low country make much more than we do. And I don't think it's fair that, we're going to diminish department heads and people who work right left of them to run their departments, for the sake of the people below them. Everybody's pulling their weight to do a good work. And I don't think it's fair that the counterparts to us, they make 50, 60, 70,000 more dollars than we do. And I didn't take a raise last year due to my deputy chief, and I didn't ask for a raise yesterday. I simply asked, just include department heads, that it does. So what I'm hearing now is, no, it's not going to be department heads. We're going to now go down to 2% or so. Everybody deserves it. Everybody in the town deserves a raise. When everybody else, when we sit and get it back, this is the kicking the can out of the road. This is exactly what we've been doing since I've worked here. And that's why everybody around us makes way more money than we do. And so it's not fair. And I say that for everybody sitting in this room, because they're not going to advocate for themselves. So I'm advocating for them. They deserve the raises too.
Well, I mean, I agree with you. I just want
I'm
to
not
make,
talking to you, sir. I'm just saying.
Yeah,
it's
right.
Full council.
Yeah.
Every one of my police officers deserves 10%. Every one of them. Not one deserves 2, one deserves 3, one deserves 5. And you're going to put the onus on me to tell this person, you're not going to get the 38% or the 10% that the entire council voted for. You're going to get what I'm going to give you. That's going to cause a morale problem. So I disagree 100% that you choose and pick and cherry pick who you want us to have paid what. I think everybody in the town deserves the money. I think the money is there. I know everybody says they don't know where the money is. They don't know how much money is here or there. But there is openings that have been held open almost all year long that have a lot of money sitting right there. So I say that before a decision gets made and then we never meet again about it until the first reading. So I say that because I know my counterparts make much more than I do. I know my second, third, fourth, and fifth person below me, they make much more than them. I can go to the county right now as a captain. It's almost what I make right now as a captain. My span of control is much higher than that. So I'm not saying that for Doug Wright. I'm saying that because these people in here, they're not getting paid what they're due because all we ever do is hand out of it. Sorry if I make you upset, but we don't say it now. It's not going to be said. And between the new show between now and the next reading, it's not going to happen.
Chief, what I would say is that in the past, what we've done when we give any kind of significant increase, and I don't consider, 2% or 3% significant, but when we've done it in the past, we've bifurcated it. We've had a cost of living adjustment, if you want to call it that, or a small raise, if you want to call it that, and it would be across the board. And then on top of that, we would give a percentage to division and department heads to distribute accordingly, whether it was by merit or whether it was by just what's happened in the past with these either hiring a higher rate or these COLAs, these cross-board COLAs causing disparity, because they do cause disparity. And that's what, I mean, I understand we'd all like to be paid more, but that's what we pay our division heads and department heads for, is to make those difficult decisions. You get 4%, you get 6%.
Yes, sir. I can't remember the last time we had merit raises. We were getting COLA, that's all we get. I remember one year we found out we got a $1,500 bonus. One-time bonus, we haven't had COLA in years that I can remember. Excuse me, merit in years. So all those years of compression of not getting merit, now the year come and say, we're gonna let you get a certain percentage. I'm making a brave decision by telling you, putting my job on the line right now, by telling you all that all of my officers deserve 10%, because that is the only way I can get this pay structure work that allows people to make what they're supposed to make. There's no window for me to say, okay, I'm bringing you in at 3% more than another one. Absolutely. I don't have the ability to do that without implementing that. So I respect everything all of you are saying. I'm just saying that we make the tough decision. We make it a tough decision to have to hear about it for years. I don't think employees are calling your offices and complaining to you about how they're treated by the department head, but I hear it every day. We're not making a good decision. They blame it on me. They blame it on us. So I just say that because I don't think it's not about Doug White getting a pay raise. I make way more than I ever thought of. I started at $19,000 working here. And I've never done it for a dollar, never. But at the end of the day, inflation is here, and all of our partners around the country, around the state, that are carrying smaller workloads than we are, do more with more, when we're doing more with less, are making more money. And I think that this is a time that you all can gleam and shine very high, very well. And I appreciate you all even taking steps considering 8%. I say that because the message everybody got yesterday, I think it's very clear. Everybody's getting 8% across the board. It was never during the 8%. You get this person, this much, this person, that much, this person, that much. They already heard it all. I went last night, the third Thursday, my officer said, I'm getting 8%. I said, no. I said, you're getting that put into our pay structure to help bring you all to where we agreed to go to last year. But that's the message everybody heard yesterday. They were watching it all and they're talking.
Well, a couple of these, Steve. First of all, you're not putting your job on the line. No employee should ever think they're putting their job on the line by speaking freely, particularly to the staff of us. But several. And that was a concern yesterday for me, that some of this might be getting lost in translation, because several division and department heads said they wanted flexibility with that 8%. And that's what they were talking about. These across the board pay increases is what causes disparities. And that's a morale problem too, because 8 or 10% on $90,000 is 8 or 10% on top of $40,000 is two very different numbers. And we count on our division and department heads to determine the most equitable way to distribute whatever it is. If we have to go away from that, and I mean, I hope we don't ever have to, where council's having to do it ourselves. But everybody gets 8 or 10%, no matter what they're already making. It's just bad policy.
So, yes, sir. So I'm in my world. I'm not in any of their world. My world is the pay structure I implemented. Took that away. I took away the good old boy system from Somerville Police Department, where everybody was getting paid the same amount. I had people coming at entry level making more than people who have been there for 5 years. I changed that. I had some people who didn't get a single raise last year. They won't get a single raise this year. They've been on the job for 2 years. They haven't earned their keep yet. But what in Doug's world of what I'm saying is, y'all asked me yesterday, would 8% bring you up to the full amount? And I said, yes, I think it would. I want more. And I went back and ran the numbers. We were $96,375 short to bring my pay up to where we discussed and agreed that we were going to go last year. The other departments are still doing things their way. That's the onus is on them. But for us, not everybody is going to get a raise in the Somerville Police Department, but it brings everybody up to exactly where we are with 10%. And I'll speak finally for the police department by itself. For the police department, if 10% goes into the pot, what we came to with that amount, we asked for $612,387, and we got $516,386 at 8%. So I need $96,375, and not that fixes it. I don't have to make the decision of who gets what anymore because of the way it works. We are, but I.
If I might. I understand what you're saying, but I disagree. And I worked in a world with worldwide offices and dozens of people working for me. So everybody does not perform at the same level. That's what was said yesterday is when we were talking 8%, it would be some combination of COLA and merit. COLA is COLA. That's a number. Everybody gets the COLA. Merit is something that you divvy out by people's performance. And I don't understand how anybody doesn't run a department like that.
So we do, we're the only department in this town that does performance evaluations every year. Everything is based off performance.
But if everybody gets the same percentage of money, you are not doing performance
No.
evaluations because they are not performing at the same level
Well, I
in
think,
any department.
and I think you're misunderstanding me, because last year, the way I explained it is, you're evaluated every 3 years, so y'all took longevity away from all the town. So we have longevity, and longevity is based off of your performance. As I explained last year, if you have two commendables and one satisfactory, or all commendables, you get a merit raise based off your merit, not based off of, you get something because you get it. So we do have that in there, sir. We do,
Okay.
we do.
So-
And I did
Can
take note of what you said last year. Yes,
Yeah.
sir.
So, yes, the police department has set up a different pay structure than the rest of the departments here. And it does have a formula that we talked about and agreed to last year. This 10% would fulfill that planned formula. The intention when we talked about the 8% yesterday was that particularly when we talked about fire and when we met with you, Chief Waring, we did acknowledge the fact that the 8% bucket would not quite reach the minimum starting pay you wanted for your firefighters. So you acknowledge that we may have to tweak those higher levels to meet your goals. The thought was that most employees would get the 8%, but there may be some situations in particular departments where you have these lower paid employees that we need to be brought up a little bit higher, but that you could rely on your department heads, division directors to make those decisions.
And that's how we've always done it. It's just that yesterday, there was all of the conversation was about lower paid employees. And even if they get 8 or 10% at the lowest ranks, if somebody in their department already making double what they make or more also gets 8 to 10% more, and the gap between the lowest paid employee and the highest paid employee continues to grow, that's a morale issue in departments too, trust me.
I agree. And I think we can depend on our department heads to recognize that and know where we need to make those adjustments.
Yes.
The other thing I would just say about the longevity, because we are being watched here. Council actually did not take away longevity pay. What happened was council approved for 1 year, a one-time longevity adjustment. And that's the only vote that council's ever taken. What happened, and this was 2 administrators ago, was they just got put in the budget every year and nobody on council was told about it. And that's pretty dysfunctional as well. So finally, and I don't remember whether it was Ms. Wallace or her predecessor, someone found out that this was happening, that the longevity, the one-time longevity addition that council approved just became permanent and no one chose to share it with council. So the only vote we've ever taken was a one-time longevity increase. So I just kind of wanted to be clear about that.
I work at the police department on there.
Just want to make a quick comment. First of all, Chief, again, I want to echo what Councilman McIntosh said. You should never fear for your job to give honest feedback. So, roger that, yeah.
And I remember when you were making 19,000.
But I also want us to be careful. I think it's a very slippery slope when we start as a council and a board of directors that sets policy, get too deep in the weeds with what's going on in the departments. And I believe we rely on our division directors and our department heads to make the challenging decisions of how to administer these increases. And each one individually may do it differently. And our encouragement is to watch out for those lower income folks who really need to get to a living wage in this environment. But each of you will know your people the best to make those decisions. That's just from my perspective.
And I appreciate what you're saying to an extent, because I do think we try very hard to do that. We try to, first of all, when we have an administrator, we try to hire an administrator that will help us hire the right division and department heads that can do that, and we can trust, because it's extraordinarily difficult for the 7 of us to play the role, perform the role that we're asked to perform and we've signed up for. But where I disagree with you is the role of this council is not as a board of directors, and it's not just to set policy. We're not just a legislative body. Under our council form of government, the 7 of us are the top of the administrative. There is no distinction between legislative and administrative in the council form of government. As the town has grown, obviously we have to rely on folks that we've hired, but we're not policy makers only, and we're not a board of directors. We're the top of the administration of the council. It's a huge difference.
So just to clarify, what is being proposed is a 10% bucket, then the department heads would determine how to distribute that 10% or up to 10% to the employees at whatever level we feel would be appropriate. That way.
Well, I think we're looking at a COLA percentage that would just automatically apply to everyone. And then a percentage that would then be decided among department heads.
What I was looking for, I don't want to speak for all the council. Yesterday, when we talked about the 8, but whatever the number is, there was a COLA portion of it and a merit portion of it that Lisa and Rhonda, I assume, would be coming back and saying, okay, whatever the total number is, X% of that is going to be COLA that applies to everyone. And X% of that is going to be merit, that is going to be department head funnel money, and you decide how to divide that between your employees. And you're going to have different ways and methodologies and reasons to do it differently. My opinion.
I agree.
One thing Doug said that got my attention, he said it gives your people an evaluation every year, right?
Yes, sir.
Because it's a written evaluation.
Yes, sir.
Okay. The reason I bring that up, I've brought this up before. You certainly I trust the department heads, but I think anybody who's working for you should be giving an annual evaluation. And the reason I'm putting it in writing, because if that person did not qualify for the additional funds this year, you've got a record there, you point out to them how they can improve, so next year they can qualify. If you leave it up to department heads just to pick and choose the people who are going to get the benefits beyond the COLA, I think you're giving the department head a tough job, because we're all human beings. There's some people we like, there's some people we don't like. And but if you have a record of that person's performance, just like a school teacher or professor in college, then you said, okay, you didn't qualify this time, but here's where you're short. Pick these things, and next time we can give it to you. And so I've got a problem with people just picking and choosing the people that work for them who's going to get the benefits. I just think that's a bad way to go.
Well, we actually do it monthly. We have monthly, we actually do monthly. We were doing annuals until I became the chief. But when you do an annual, all you remember is the last good thing they did or the last bad thing they did. Don't remember what they did in January. So we do it monthly now. We're called chronological. They go over the good, the bad, the ugly, and then they have a month to improve. So we have 12 months of that by the time we do the annual for each employee.
Well, in a lot of organizations, even the military, they give, if you miss your qualification, it's time to get the additional funds. There's a record to tell you how you can improve. And that's what you want to be. You want people to improve. So I think you need to do the work if you want to get your people to be where they want to be. If you're just saying, okay, I'm going to give Joe this raise and Bill, you're not getting it. If Bill hears out he's not getting it, and Joe got one, and you didn't do a decent evaluation of both men, I think you created a problem.
Okay, so I think what we'll do, we'll work at 10% into the numbers and come back to you with where that split maybe could lie after some discussions with department heads. Okay. Okay, Mr. Mayor.
I'm sitting there listening, we because I had so many years of working for the town, but in modern time, I started back in, when I started, they paid us all $100 a week. Period. I don't give a damn what your title was.
Prehistoric.
Yeah. But then as we progressed through the years, we finally got, talking about messed up salaries, Doug, I know what you're talking about. You had a sergeant, but you might have a corporal making more money than that sergeant. That wasn't worth the two. So we tried to get through that problem, department heads, I'm talking about long before I thought about having run the town council, but we hired Archer, you were here when we hired Archer once. We hired Archer to do a salary study for us. And it was great. We just didn't go by it. And when I mean we, council didn't go by it. We went by it. Department heads went exactly by it. We evaluated our people. We put in there what we thought they ought to get. And I think it might have lasted 1 or 2 years. But God, as Bill refers us to, they didn't do it. So we paid all this money for Archer and we did it 1 year. And I never will forget how mad Jack Wilbanks got because he was sold on this because he knew it would work. It set us apart where we could never have, we would have what Bill just described, and we wouldn't be sitting here today still fighting what we've been fighting since I came to work for the town 50 years ago. Doug left here yesterday thinking that everybody would get an 8% raise, including him. Now, I missed that part of the meeting, so I wasn't here, but that's how he left, that perception. So today he comes back and he finds out that's not what's going to happen at all. So somehow or another, he got misinterpreted what went on. So that's not good, because he's got to go back now and explain that to his people. Plus, he's not going to get the raise he thought he was going to get. So how many more people in this room think that way? I don't know. I wasn't here, but we got to fix. This council needs to fix exactly what we need to fix it and stick to it. Not come up with a 2%. We've been doing 2% raises. I know for the last 3 years because I've been here as mayor. And so that's all everybody ever expects, a 2% raise. Well, what the devil is that? Now, Bill, according to what he puts on Facebook, we rich.
We got the money, there's no
Yeah.
question. We run about
rich.
$500,000 a month surplus over the 18 months ending June 30th.
Do we have that
2022.
under? We got $500,000 a month.
Well, that ended over a year ago, but that's the beauty of audits. It's an upside and a downside of audits.
That happened over a year ago. I saw it on Facebook last night.
I'm talking about when the audit ended. The audit ended 9 months
You
ago.
take it on Facebook, because I saw it at $600 and something thousand a month last night. I read it. I know you put it on there a long time ago.
Yeah,
Let's
no,
not argue about that.
No, what it said,
But
just to be clear,
We rich.
what it said was between January 1st, 2021 and June 30th, 2022, we were running about a $600,000 a month surplus. And in June of 2022, we raised taxes. What we didn't know was that we were running that $500,000 to $600,000 a month surplus because we didn't have the audits. The upside of audits is you find out what you actually have. The downside of audits is by the time you get them, they're dated.
All right, these people don't care about that.
Well, and Mayor,
Care about it.
I don't care about it either, because I went along with the taxes. Thank God we did need them right now this year.
Mayor, I think what you're saying, there's been a lot of conversation and we've heard from different department heads and I think what we're saying is we're recognizing that there are differences in different departments and the needs that they have to rectify what happens in their given departments. We need to allow them to apply things differently. What Chief is going to do, Chief Wright is going to do in his department may be different from what Chief Waring is going to do in his department, different from what Russ is going to do in his. They need to fix well, you're still here. And so you leave it to department heads to right the ship, their ship, which they know better than us. And I think Archer dealt with that in an effective way. Because each department was different.
Right.
And I think that's what this is gonna allow department heads to do.
And I agree with, I don't even know who said it now, it's gone on so long. That between Rhonda and Lisa, they can take our responsibility of saying how much money we have to give. We're done. Lisa, Rhonda, and these professionals here, I am sure can figure out how to disperse that equitably.
I think they can too, but right now we're not there. So, I mean, when Doug, puts his heart out on the table, I'm using Doug because he's the one that spoke up. And he does have a problem. I mean, because he's speaking from his heart. He's saying how he feels. He's saying how he took it yesterday, his perception. And he's gonna walk out of here unless we do something. He ain't going anywhere, but he's still underpaid when he compares the salary to people in our area in Dorchester County. So he can't, it's hard for him to go back and say, okay, the underpaid people, he's gonna take part of his salary, that's what y'all are saying. He's gonna take part of his salary, he's gonna dibble it around to everybody else where he ends up with the 2%.
I think the extra 2% may get you the same as it was with Chief Wright. It may get you to where you wanted to be as far as your underpaid or where your minimum to enable the 10% up top. I know we haven't checked the numbers yet, but it'll certainly get you closer.
And I think,
I feel like what's going on here is, a lot of the what I'm hearing is a lot of the same thing. A lot of the same conversations, just said a little differently, but, I'm willing to bet that all the department heads in here have a plan for their employees, as far as a pay structure. Yeah, and a lot of y'all, I wasn't here for the Archer study, are probably basing it off of some variation of that. And I've worked in 2 different municipalities in my life, in my career, and both of them, I mean, they are in here, have always dealt with the same type of scenario. Percentage-based raises, in my opinion, are a bad idea, but because of the disparities they do, as Councilman McIntyre said, but I think if we just fund these plans that all these departments have, and then we can take that first step to get us where we need to be, because right, that's all we're trying to do is get these plans funded. So if you guys are able to give us 8%, we'll take the 8% and apply it to the amount that we have in our plan that we've already established. If y'all want to see those plans, I'm sure that all of us would be more than happy to share the plans that we have for our departments. But if you have, it's depending on how far you want to get the weeds, but that's where we are kind of at the end of the day. I don't think there's not a department head in here that's going to go give some money to this person just because they like them better. That kind of stuff just doesn't go on anymore. And I'm happy to say that it doesn't. That's because I could call it huge morale. That'll call it morale issue in a minute. But us having these solid plans that we've shared with our departments, especially the larger departments, like Mark and Ryan, them they bigger departments as well. Of course, Chief Wright has the biggest department, but as long as we have a plan and we share that plan and be transparent with our employees up front, then I don't think we'll have a problem with the morale issues that we're talking about. But anyway, that's just my 2 cents as we.
And that's basically what I'm talking about, so everybody understands. We have a plan. It's not that everybody's gonna get 2 or 8. The plan is X amount of dollars, and we knew what 8% would fund X amount of dollars to bring everybody where we're at. The 10% would bring everybody where they're at, and that's within what we're saying. Please don't understand, I was advocating for everybody in here, not for me getting paid more money. I'm just saying the department heads do so much for less than what everybody else is getting. And that's all I'm saying is, me and my deputy chief forewent raises last year so that our people could have raises. And I say that because I'm willing to do it again. But what I heard yesterday and what people who were watching your live stream heard was exactly what I presented to you. So walking out of here, I want my people on the record to hear me say, you watched it yesterday, you understand where I'm at right now and why I'm saying what I'm saying. But if we can get that pot of money that Miss Rhonda and Dan and Lisa could work with us with,
then we're golden. We're happy. So please don't misunderstand or misconstrue what I was saying.
Chief, I do believe you're underpaid as police chief. When I took office 10, 11 years ago, one of the neatest things that I've learned is we got the pay of everybody making more than 50,000, which is public information. And 11 years ago, the highest paid person in town government and the only person in town government making six-figure salary was the police chief. And I thought that was exactly the right message. And I know what you make, and I know what Chief Owens was making 11 years ago, and we've fallen way behind inflation and what we pay our police chiefs. I just wanted to say that.
And just one more thing to add is what I would encourage for the future. Increases concern, and I think that's what we do a lot, what I've experienced in my last 11 years in town. Now we're out there. Is we do something good and we look at it as a finish line. And then we don't do anything good for a while. And then we're right back where we are now. So we have to look at this as a starting point of the next step. So that's what I look forward to seeing, you guys doing in the future. Thanks.
Council agreed, we let Lisa and Rhonda go ahead and work on this and then get back with the department heads. And I think you all heard what the people say that work the most people, and we know what we can do with the lowest paid people, because Jerry's made that amendment. So, is everybody satisfied with that? We move on.
I think we're moving in the right direction. I mean, I listened to the comments of police chief and the fire chief, but we've sort of been, avoiding the situation of dealing with the issues of making sure that our frontline people are well paid. I hope we get a conclusion here from the administration that will allow us to, stick our chest out and give these people the money that they need to do the job they need to do it. And I think right now, and I think we've heard enough this morning, they say this is a serious guy. We're the people that's dealing. We want to take care of the lower level people too, but the people who out here every day, people who take care of us, we need to take care of these people, because it's a very, very competitive thing. If you pick up the Postman Code and you read what Charleston County is doing for their police department, the various municipalities, everybody's way ahead of us. And what we're doing, we're just falling farther and farther behind. So we've got to address this issue. I think this is the time to do it now.
Okay, so now we can get started on today's agenda.
I was and I apologize for being late. I have a standing 8:45 conference call every morning. But when I walked in, I was really confused as to how we were talking about fund balance, but now I understand we haven't started the meeting yet.
We were waiting on
Like
you.
place across the street, you just move back.
Okay, so
Call the meeting to order.
next up, Mayor, we're gonna have some fund balance discussion and ask Rhonda to go over that with us.
Fund balance, not fund balance, right? This is a conversation we started at Finance Committee, I believe this month. And what I had kind of explained is that, our fund balance policy as it stands now, actually refers to our categories of fund balance as being committed and then unassigned. Committed from a rating agency perspective, says you can't spend that money for anything. And it looks like it's tied up, and then it only gives us, an unassigned of $10 million. That's not really how I don't think how it operates here. That's not how it was intended. And I don't think anybody that put the policy in place, really knew what was happening. Over the years, the presentation, the audit has changed. And at one point, it didn't have those two committed categories. And when it changed like that, the rating agencies was like, oh my gosh, what happened to your unassigned fund balance? Lisa and I had a terrible or a very frustrating conversation trying to explain to them that nothing happened to it, but, you know, we just put it in different categories. Certainly supposed to be a, stopgap. The committed for general government is 20% of revenues, and disaster and recovery is $3 million. We all know what that's for. I think it's been $3 million for as many audit reports as I could find. So I would suspect that in today's world, that 3 million is not enough. So. So Lisa and I talked about it and wondered if we need to approve a fund balance policy every couple of years anyhow. It's good policy. Rating agencies like to know the council's looking at fund balance policy. So we looked at it and say, let's bump disaster recovery up to 5 million. To give us a little bit of protection there. And then let's put everything in unassigned and then just define a target unassigned number, which is 30% of our revenues. When we're looking at fund balance at the end of June, remember, we're on top of the mountain. That's the highest it's ever going to be. And then we start spending down that fund balance from year to year to year. And Commissioner McIntosh, I don't want to dispute your information, but when for that June 21 audit period, we actually budgeted $10 million that went to fund balance because that was the short year. I think we ended up with 9, something like that. But, and that was needed because of the transition to the June 30 year end. If our year end remained at December 31, we would probably be at 12, 13, 14 million dollars at fund balance at this point, mainly because of the significant capital purchase we had in 2020. I'm really trying not to think about 2020 and 2021 anymore, but but anyway, it is a fact, so we can't get lost in the fact that that's what the situation is now. I fully expect that, kind of my thought was that when we liquidate some of the other property around the Woodlands, some of that would come back to fund balance because we did lose some of that in 2020. So that is in the past. This is where we are. This is the audit. This is how fund balance was calculated. Again, this 2,000,001 is the lease purchase that we haven't purchased. So this 23 is really 21. I mean, in actuality, as far as looking at what is really spendable. So just wanted to present it exactly how it would look under our new proposed fund balance policy and how it is now. I think you have both details in your book, and just wanted to get some input, comments.
Disaster recovery from 3 million to 5 million makes sense. Happened earlier in the month. I was down in the Sanibel Captiva area where they had a Cap 4 in September. It's phenomenal. It's so much like you go and you just think about what things cost in 1987 compared to today. I wouldn't want to restrict it for more than 5 million, or committed, I'm sorry, for more than 5 million. But 5 million is probably not enough if we get another Cap 4 hurricane. You hope that the feds replenish some of it, but I mean, I think 5 is fine, but you could justify more. I mean, I remember when we implemented this fund balance, and this fund balance policy, I really think we just picked the wrong word. The thought was that if you said you was committed for something instead of restricted, that wouldn't cause problems, but it did. So, so don't say commit unless you mean restrict, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, I think another reason we wanted to structure it this way and how she highlighted target unassigned versus the actual unassigned, I think that gives council a better comfort level in seeing perhaps where we might be able to spend some capital out of fund balance.
And that was the intention of the previous fund balance policy that Captain Martin put in place, was to try to give a couple of council members some comfort with spending any of fund balance. And just, they're just one or two council members that are no longer with us that just did not think you should spend a dime of fund balance, even if you're running surpluses. And so the policy, this, I think, says it more, it shows it more clearly, but it's the fund balance is not just a rainy day fund.
Right, right. I mean, it definitely is. And, but, and I don't want to be negative, Nelly, we can spend much fund balance we all want to spend, but at some point, it doesn't come back on its own. We have to operate at, if we operate at surpluses, we don't plan to operate at surpluses. So hopefully our tax assessments increase a little bit, maybe our business license increase a little bit. Obviously, we stand here trying to project what our revenues will be. I hope that fund balance is a placeholder and we don't have to exhaust, all of it. But I think it does show a little more clearly what we do have available. I think it sends a better message to our rating agencies. And I heard somebody mention something about borrowing money again.
And
Rhonda, explain to me one more time, pardon my slowness, what is the 215?
I think 215 is an encumbrance or accounts payable or something that was just in process at the end of the year. That number changes. I think the previous year it was like 160 or something. It's just an expenditure that hasn't been.
Okay. It's what gets caught by the arbitrary deadline.
Pardon? Yeah, yeah.
And the 2.1 is that's for things that we've purchased long-term?
That was the lease purchase money that we had to count as revenue. But at that point in time, we had not expended the money for the equipment. And like the fire truck, we still haven't, So we had to reserve fund balance because we took this revenue in that very purpose. And we haven't spent the money yet. So we restrict fund balance to be able to, basically, that's what we'll be using when we write the check for the fire truck. And it's already.
That's money we borrowed.
That's the borrow, that happens to be the lease purchase, but that leads to my question. So yesterday we talked about, obviously we're not voting on the budget yet, but we talked about the $1.1 million truck. I was gonna say for Chief Waring, but for Chief Melcher. And we talked about from this year's budget, $350,000. Is that then, so next year or whenever when the 6/30/24 audit comes and fund balance comes, will that 350 from this year's budget go to that line, that capital projects line?
Technically, yes, but what I heard yesterday from Chief Waring is that we have to issue a purchase order for the whole amount. And if we have to issue a purchase order for the whole amount, then the whole amount is gonna have to be reflected in here, not just the 350. Internally, if we don't issue a purchase order just yet and get in line, then we can segregate this 350 this year, 350 next year. But if we issue a purchase order and say, yep, we're gonna get this, it has to go in here as being restricted for that purpose, for that.
So the budget item from yesterday at 350 is not real.
Right, yeah. I
Okay.
mean, that's what I learned. I learned that too, as we were talking through that. We just didn't make that distinction. Isn't that correct?
Yeah, for us to get in line, we have to, sign contract.
So we're not writing a check, but we're issuing the purchase order, which obligates.
And so we have,
Committing fund.
Yeah.
so we have to encumber this because of that.
But do we actually then move 350 from operating to? I mean,
It basically would just move from here to probably here. It wouldn't be an operating. I think.
so do you run the risk of doing it off budget? I mean, that's. I mean, it's easier for my small trying to comprehend, all right, we're gonna take 350 out of this year's revenues and put it over here. But we're not doing that.
No, I don't think so.
No.
So.
I'll try to keep up.
So we can have it in the budget. And we can have 350 in the budget, it doesn't matter, but if we encumber the whole purchase order, we really have to have it, it'll have to be approved by you guys.
Be offset somewhere.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So
So,
within this, there's some capital in the budget. And you've got some of the capital up there, but for other, how do we make other capital expenditures? What, I had thought it, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, we did identify several items to come out of the general fund balance. If that is approved, if it looks like that's what we're gonna do, I guess one of two ways would we show a transfer from general funds? From general fund balance to cover those.
we'll just have a use of fund balance.
And then that would increase the line that's set aside for capital projects, the 2.1. Whatever we assign would be placed there.
Right.
That kind of, this line item in this fund balance becomes our capital fund theoretically.
Is it placed there or is it actually placed in the budget?
So I think, so,
From fund balance to budget?
so on a simplified level, I think, if we had $1 million in the budget for a fire truck, okay, we don't write the check. We just encumber it. We just issue the purchase order. So all else things remaining the same. We're on target everywhere else. We basically have $1 million surplus. Okay, which goes to fund balance and then it gets encumbered. It just gets set aside in the balance.
And
Does that make sense?
yeah, and so if you said you were gonna buy 40 police cars.
I can say fire truck.
Me too, I was about to go over that.
But if you're gonna buy 40 police
Every
cars
neighborhood-
now instead of 20 that we've got in the budget, that would come from the unassigned and moved into the budget.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct. Yes.
And I guess on all
We
this
need-
budget and surpluses and all, what I'm concerned with and haven't heard talked about is next year. We're talking about all the extra money, but in the last 2 years, we had a free $8 million check to cover us through most of our capital and operating stuff, and we sold property. If we subtract those from our fund, we're in trouble.
You're correct. You're correct. We did have a lot of use of those funds.
I mean, we had 2-3 years
Right.
basically to actually do what we should have been doing for the last 15.
And so that's what, one of the points that I wanted to make too is, just like I said, with police cars, it's $1.5 million that we may pull from general fund balance. What are we gonna do next year?
Not
Exactly.
Sustainable, yeah.
Yeah, it's only, it's a Band-Aid, and I'm not saying that we can't catch up, but I just think we need to recognize it.
Yeah, I guess that's using the capital fund. I agree with what we're doing now. But like I said yesterday, while you can use it, when you start dipping into your savings, you need to look at why, because that is not sustainable. That is the big exclamation point that we're not doing something right.
So if there's, again, I don't have a long history in government. I don't know what some of the other municipalities are doing. But I was trying to think, in your own household budget, you try to start saving for something, but then you've got to fund your normal operating expenses at the same time. So certainly when you start a program like that, I think it's painful. And you're setting aside, if we identify some bucket of money that we can set aside for capital expenditures, but we still have to have a string that we can pay our normal expenses. So I think it's something that we all can brainstorm and think of. There's some creative ways, but
I mean,
money in, money out.
and I guess that's my worry. better than $10 million that we may not have next year, and we want to build a fire station, a court, and a raise. That's decent. Huh? I thought I said that. Oh, well, that's what you get for speaking up.
Melcher heard fire station. So did Doug.
So do we have any other questions about the proposed fund balance policy?
No, I think the changes make sense, and they're not dramatic changes. The idea was, it initially was, at some point, we're not just stockpiling money. That, we're either not spending enough, we're taxing too much, or both. But just simply stockpiling money on top of the fund balance, we had, and still have, by far, as a percentage of operating funds, the highest fund balance in the state. Is not even a close second. And the reason for the policy under Colin Martin was to try to distinguish between what we were stockpiling and what we absolutely had to have in savings, and having a plan to try to bring those numbers a little bit closer to each other. We screwed up when we used the word committed, though, apparently.
Yeah.
What's the second town that's highest fund balance?
I think as a percentage of their annual operating, when we were given those numbers 4 or 5 years ago by our financial analysts, our financial people, I want to say Greer was right up there. That they were don't misunderstand, there are cities that have bigger fund balances, but they also are much larger cities with much larger annual budgets. But as a percentage of our annual revenues, we have the highest fund balance by a lot. And that was Mayor Myers' legacy. I mean, there was just no getting away from that.
Was that in consideration of other funds they have, like a capital fund or an infrastructure fund? Since we don't have those, everything rolls into our general fund. So I just want to make sure it was apples to apples in that comparison.
Could not tell you, but that was when we started using in a significant way. Well, shortly before getting that information was when we started using in a significant way our skyrocketing fund balance to fund capital projects. And we did. I mean, it was Mayor Johnson and Councilwoman Zarnik that were just absolutely opposed to spending anything out of fund balance. So we put this fund balance policy together to just try to explain what we were doing. That we were stockpiling money and we had these needs.
And of course, I stood here and criticized lease purchase, but that's an option for a fire truck. That's a reasonable option for a fire truck if we're looking at that, and we don't want to take $1 million out of fund.
Well, and I think yesterday we kind of concluded that lease purchase might be the right thing for a huge ticket item, but lease purchasing for
I agree.
regular vehicles is probably a
I agree.
mistake. And I don't know why I said problem.
And the interest rate was good back then too.
Yeah.
It might not be a good decision today. It was a great decision then because of today.
Hindsight's wonderful.
Okay. For the lease purchase fire trucks, just kind of keep in mind, when moving forward, when we lease purchase one, and we have to buy a second one the second year, now we have 2 on lease purchase, and we get a 3 the third year. Once again, going back to my finish line, talked a minute ago, we don't get to buy a fire truck and not buy one for 8 years. Buy another one for 8 years. We have what I say is 11 trucks in the fleet. So if we want to keep any kind of sustainable time limit on what we're going to run these trucks, we can't just buy one and wait 10 years to buy another one. So it's just something to throw out there and make sure that we're grasping that as well.
Which is another reason for more long range planning, instead of coming here with a single year, I hope in the next year or so that we can come here with at least a 3-year plan of some sort.
And we've gotten bigger. How many fire stations do we have when we had 2? And we are still running our budgets like that's all we have. And I mean, I'm concerned with how we manage the future. And I think we need to think about it.
Anything else? I think.
What's that number get down to, like in the 23 million, when we're going through the second half of the year, what does that number get down to? And say, oh,
Minus.
Yeah.
9.5.
This is the, I think the 11 million that is the committed now. And as we go through the year, in FY 23, this was the Dominion purchase, so we dipped a little bit more. FY 22, we dipped below there. So, $10 million.
so a hurricane in October would do that.
Yeah. How fast, yeah.
Take that back.
Here they go.
How fast-
We could
Take that back, chief.
How fast is, if we go to 5, that will obviously bump this up a little bit. But how fast does FEMA cut check?
Long time. Was it 3, 4 years? Was it?
Yeah. So just a little visual depiction. I'm simple-minded. I like things as simple as possible. I think that's all slide.
So in that, if that's $9.5 million called at the bottom, 5 of that is the emergency fund. Correct?
This
Yep.
scenario, this is our current policy, that would be 3 million.
Yeah, I mean, 3 million, but going forward, I mean, those,
Yes.
if those numbers were real and they were in today, what we're looking at, 5 of the 9.5 would be, the emergency fund.
Right.
And you'd have, 4.5 left that is still dealing with capital expenditures on.
So yeah, so actually we would have the 5 plus
Right.
the 11, so we would really be up here.
Five's not, so 5's not showing the other.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay,
Yeah.
That's, curious about.
That's helpful. But because the hurricane in October that somehow prevented everybody from paying their property taxes. What they would feel about. Because that's what happens in December to January. I mean, it's a huge spike.
Yeah.
Change hurricanes. Oh, good.
Okay. There are no other questions about the fund balance policy. Obviously, that will have to come back before council as motion on a future agenda. We'll bring that back before you.
is this what this is? I hadn't read it.
Yes, you should have the current policy and the proposed policy in your booklet.
We went over that at finance last time, didn't we?
She talked about it and I have sent you the proposed new policy.
Yeah.
But it hasn't been on an agenda for a vote.
Okay.
Okay. I think Jesse would be next, Rhonda. For the mic. So we're talking about who's got those. Here. Oh, yeah. Can we have a break there? We're on now.
24 acres in the woods. But either way, we're further on, we have we will call it industrial or build up scale apartments.
1,250. All right, let's get back together and we will turn it over to Jesse.
It starts.
Is that what-
Yes, yes, sir. We're gonna go over fee schedules.
Yeah.
Let me see where this at.
All right, thank you, Mayor. I just have a few, slight changes, to our fee schedule. You know, last year when I discussed the changes, y'all told me to look at more, so I did. But, still, just, some like slight changes, with home occupation permits, conditional use permits, our current fee is $10. I don't know if y'all pay real close attention to the monthly reports that I send out, but we get a lot of home occupation conditional permit submittals, and it does take a decent amount of staff time to review those, particularly dealing with folks who may be renting from somebody or that type of thing. So proposing to raise that fee to $25. Looking at surrounding jurisdictions, most of them have it at least $25. A number of them have it at $50 or $100. So it's still going to be a reasonable rate for folks, but just bringing that more in line with the actual amount of staff time and more in line with the surrounding jurisdictions. The other one is, it looks like a lot, but it's all the DRB review fees. We're kind of adjusting these because we noticed previously we had 1 to 5 acres and then, 5 to 10. We don't have a lot of properties that are over, 2 acres that we review. But the larger properties do take a significant more amount of time of staff time to review it ahead of DRB, and then a significant more time for DRB to actually review the project. So just trying to add some additional acreage amounts to bring it more in line with what we'd see. So less than an acre would be the $100 fee, which is where we started last time. And all of these were paying $100 anyway, the ones that were less than an acre, because we had 0 to 5 was 100. So that doesn't change that one, but 1 to 2 acres would move up to 150, 3 to 5 will move to 200. So it just, and then it'd go from the 6 to 10, and that's where that schedule went before. So it's just a slight adjustment, but I feel like it's more in line. And then also previously they only paid at preliminary. So someone could go to the board 6 times and only pay 1 fee. And we realized that wasn't really working because basically people would ignore what the board was telling them, come back multiple times, just trying to get it approved until they finally realized they weren't going to get it approved unless they made the changes. So we figured maybe if we actually charged the fee each time they came before the board after conceptual, they would be more apt to listen to the board's recommendations the first time they gave them. So this is also changing it so that the fee is paid every time they come before the board, unless we do still give a free conceptual review because they don't actually take a vote at conceptual, they just give initial feedback. And we hope that people do conceptual because then it makes the process easier for them to start with, because they get feedback at the beginning and don't spend a whole lot of money having to make changes to that process. So those are the only 2 proposed changes to the planning fee schedule. Any questions?
We started with last year's budget, because we're taking all of the fee schedules and attaching them to the budget ordinance, so that these fee schedules, we look at them every year. Because I think in the past, we kind of forgot about them, and then we got to a point where we were really way behind, and then having to vote on them separately. So this just, it forces us to look at it every year, and it's adopted at the same time as the budget. So if everybody's okay with that, we'll have the new fee schedule attached to the budget ordinance. Let's see, next, Parks and Recreation.
I have a couple as well. The first one is really the kitchen area. This is something is in its infancy, the kitchen at Ron's Edwards Community Center. We have one tenant and we have a lot of inquiries about using it. It's not a full-scale commercial kitchen because we don't have some of the amenities that other places do with storage, towel service, et cetera. But for a lot of folks, this will work for them. So the inquiries there, the potential is there for revenue. So we've got programs listed, how many times it would be used based on hours. Beyond that, it would be a first come, first served basis. We could take one tenant full time if we need be. So this is something we definitely would like to explore. We see the potential in that for a lot of use.
Amy handed you all an extra sheet yesterday, so it kind of gives you a little bit more explanation as to what that is.
Tim, what is quick drive? I'm sorry, you got an increase on quick drive? Yes, on those scenarios, basically, this is just the cost of goods for us. What we're buying 17 is now 18, 19, $20. So banners, same thing, just cost of goods for us to make banners to hang for the sponsorship. Those two items are cost of goods. Under the special events, our time used in permit covering our costs, and then the last one with the staff, park staff at the special events, if we're increasing salaries, we need to pass those along to make sure we're covering our costs. So those two items is covering our time and effort. The other two are cost of goods that have gone up, and the other one is the kitchen.
The quick drive is simply put on the dirt on the infield on the rain.
Yep. Okay. I guess my only thing, and I talked to Amy about it, the leak fee. I think we need to revisit that $40 for them coming in and twice a year is probably not covering, especially a large percentage of that is non-residents. So we've even kind of looked at council needs to decide, where we're gonna go between residents and non-residents, because we're running out of available space. And our job is to give our residents first, so I think we might want to look at that $40 and make it something realistic.
Are there any liability issues with the commercial kitchen?
Yes, there's always potential.
I've never seen the exclusion for it in the smart policy. You talking about if somebody uses it to give somebody food poisoning?
Yeah, or something happens in the kitchen. Somebody gets hurt in the kitchen, they're using our kitchen, they pay $25 a week. So
I think it would be the same scenario if somebody came to the gym and broke their leg on a piece of equipment or something. I think it would probably be a similar situation. And obviously, I'll defer to.
I'll have to check, but I think Amy had me look at a rental agreement, and in that rental agreement, we have them hold the town harmless.
Okay. Would we require that they have their own policy?
I believe we do.
Because we do that when we rent out for to anyone that's going to serve alcohol, for that very reason. Alcohol and kitchens cause a lot of problems, Chief. You've seen it,
So Amy sent in the text, she said they provide us insurance, naming the town of Somerville as additionally insured.
that's
So-
how I thought we handled most of our rentals, when there was any kind of risk of liabilities, that the tenant provides their own insurance policy, naming us as an additional insured.
Okay, any other questions for Tim? All right, then same scenario here. We will have this as an attachment to the upcoming budget ordinance. And then next we've got stormwater.
So fee schedule that had some changes in red. And I'm not seeing those. It was a very minor change. I'm trying to remember what it was. I believe it was a non-residential less than an acre, $100 flat fee. Basically a small commercial, non-residential site. We got a lot of those, as Jesse alluded to. And those take a lot of staff time, it seems, to review and re-review. But that, I think that was the only change. In the bottom, the major modifications to a previously approved plan, we get a good bit of those. So that modification is going up from $300 to $600. Those are the only two changes we're requesting. The non-residential less than an acre. $100. Or less than a half acre, actually. Any questions? Very good.
Moving on, we will talk about employee benefits and retention initiatives. We had hoped that we were going to be a little bit farther in the process of reviewing our health insurance policy. We established a panel, and we have met with 4 different brokerage firms to explore some other options, some other innovative ways we might be able to save some money on our insurance policy without reducing benefits to our employees. As we mentioned to you before, we have not yet received our policy renewal numbers this year. We have plugged in a 5% increase just as an assumption in this budget. Our renewal is not until October 1st. So in the meantime, we are just exploring things, looking at maybe a partially funded, self-funded plan. We're also considering an on-site health clinic for employees and family members. And I think that was something that, at least for the panel, was an exciting session. So we're going to continue to explore that. And we are also looking at potentially working with a designated healthcare provider or providers as a way to potentially reduce some of our costs. And then the main thing, and this is something that we've been asked about quite often, is retiree health insurance plan. So again, again, we're exploring that option with these 4 brokerage firms. And hope to bring you some recommendations here in the next couple of months. So
At least on the designated healthcare provider, a lot of employees use,
doctor's care.
doctor's care.
Yeah, and that was, I think, an attempt at having a designated healthcare provider. And one of the ways we tried to encourage employees to use doctor's care was that they would not have a copay when they went to doctor's care. I don't know that that has translated 100%.
Right now, a lot of them go to doctor's care because they do not have to have a copay. They don't pay a copay.
Right. So one of the exciting things about a potential on-site healthcare clinic, I do believe we have a facility that we could place an on-site healthcare clinic. We do have that space above the retail that's right next to our human resources department. But the other interesting thing is, as you know, we contract out, pre-employment drug screens, annual physicals, random drug tests. All of these things are contracted out that could be brought in-house if we were to explore something like that. So we'll just continue to research it and hopefully bring you some recommendations in a few months.
Lisa, what was the increase the last year you thought?
I think it was 6%? I know we plugged in 6%. I don't know if we quite. You don't remember? It was a little bit more than what we plugged in. I do know that, yeah.
I would just share our experience in the past, and I think just about everybody was on council when this happened at least once. But I believe it's happened twice in the last 10 or 12 years. And it's just, you know, when dealing with, in this case, Blue Cross Blue Shield, but whoever our provider is, gotta keep looking at it from a 2-year, 3-year, 4-year perspective instead of just the annual percentage, because what they'll do 5%, 6%, and then all of a sudden that 3rd or 4th year, they'll come at us with 15, 16, 18% increase. And that could be this year for all we know. And just, I mean, I know employees don't like to hear it, and I mean, I have health insurance through the town, and it wasn't fun the 2 times that we've done it. But I think we have to be prepared for it, whether it happens this year or another year. If they come at us with a 15% increase, we fire them. Because what happened the 2 times before, we went with an inferior plan with a company that was just not as responsive as Blue Cross Blue Shield. And it was miserable for a year or 2. And then miraculously, Blue Cross Blue Shield came back wanting our business and quoting us an amount that was actually a reduction from what we were paying before they came to us with the 15% increase. And I think many of us have found we have to do that with our auto insurance carriers. That if you fire your auto insurance carrier, all of a sudden, you know, they become a whole lot more competitive. I think it's a terrible way of doing business, but I think it's essentially what the insurance companies have done is they just keep hitting you with as big of increases as they think you can possibly absorb.
Yeah, and I think
I'm concerned that 5% is not enough, but we're finding all kinds of ways to spend money. And, you know, if they come at us with 15%, I think we have to be prepared to fire them.
well, and again, I think that's why it's important for us to go through this practice at least every few years so that our current carriers don't find a comfort zone that we're gonna just automatically. renew with
Exactly.
them
I like,
every
that's
year.
why I
So-
like meeting with these brokerage firms, letting them know that we're not, we can't afford to be, I mean, I love this policy we have, but we can't afford to be complacent with them because we will absolutely pay for our complacency.
Lisa, on retiree health insurance, explain a little bit more in detail what, not what it will be, but who is that going to include?
Well, we haven't gotten that far yet. So what the concept was is, first of all, can we offer a retiree health insurance coverage? And the answer is yes, we can. But we gotta pay for it. So that's the part where I think we need some more discussion. It's going to depend on, you know, do we offer it to all employees, regardless if they've been here 5 years or 10 years? Do we only offer it to employees who have been here for a much longer period of time? Is it only offered until they are eligible for Medicare? Is the town going to contribute any portion of that premium, or are we going to pass the entire cost of the premium to the employees? So there's a lot of different factors that have to be considered.
I retired, I worked with the town 25 years and I retired 5 years ago. I was a firefighter.
Again, until we've established what the policy is, I can't answer your
No,
question.
I understand that, but I'm asking, are we looking at it from employees that are here now going forward, or are we also including in the look?
For people who are no longer here?
For people who are not here, who retired 5 years ago, we didn't offer it, and now we're doing it.
Yeah,
I'm not suggesting we do anything, I'm just asking, what is that going to be included in it?
I don't think so.
Okay.
But certainly, again,
I
as
mean, I
we
think
work
it'd be
through
pretty
this,
difficult.
as we work through this, and, you know, find out exactly what we're looking at as far as cost and what, as the staff, we come to you and think maybe this is a reasonable plan that council could consider that maybe we could afford, but we just haven't gotten there yet.
I think many of us in the room remember looking over at the chiefs in particular. One of the first votes that I had to take on council was to rescind a policy where retired firefighters and police officers were no longer going to be getting health insurance benefits. Welcome to the new gig, but and so we've gone down the path before. It was a whole lot more expensive than we ever realized it might be, hence the very uncomfortable vote.
So I can tell you, one of the reasons that before it just got out of control, it was so unbelievably costly, is the fact that a retiree could stay on our plan forever. The fact that now we are looking at, okay, once somebody is eligible for Medicare, they would have to drop off. I think that will help tremendously as far as the fear factor, with it costing more and more and more in the coming years.
I mean, I'm interested in it. I mean, the whole idea, obviously, and I don't know if it'd be a separate policy than the policy that current employees have. But the idea and theory is the bigger the pool, the less risk, the lower the premiums. I mean, that's the theory anyway. So expanding the pool, particularly if, you know, we're lowering our retirees' health insurance costs, even if we don't contribute or contribute minimally to it, we're still lowering our retirees' healthcare costs. I mean, I like the idea. I just know we've been down this. I know we've been down this path before, and as Councilman Jenkins brought up, if we do pursue this and put something in place, and somehow or another, those folks who were really, really angry with me at one of my first council meetings, and they haven't hit Medicare, and we're not including them, I'm not gonna be happy with it. And neither will they.
Well, I mean, I know it's complicated, but I don't know whether just because you expand the base, the numbers, that doesn't mean it's gonna be cheaper. Because you're expanding it with older people to start off with.
Which is a good reason why to cap it at Medicare.
Yeah, oh, yeah, no, but regardless of what you do, I certainly think it's something that we ought to be looking at. Yeah, because the last time it went up that big jump was because of a very few people that had major health problems. Yeah, and just drove our costs way up. Yep.
Well, that was certainly the rationalization used by the insurance carrier. I take very little what they say at face value.
So
Everybody knows that health insurance is complicated, and what we're really trying to do is remove the unwind the components and move our employee pool leader. If we can, have an on-site clinic or a designated provider, we can get them. And take from that ordinary cost out of the blue cross blue shield pool, and they understand that we're gonna be, our claims aren't gonna be where they are. We can get rid of the drug rebates, we can get that help. So there's a lot of different components, and I think moving forward with self-insured is probably the only way that retired health insurance will come. And that's a little scary. There's been some models around that have really worked and paid off for a number of years. And I think kind of 0% increase is a big win. So that's kind of, that's what we're about. It is complicated. We're trying to unwind the components so that we can afford that.
I hope somehow having this discussion publicly keeps this year's increase, helps keep this year's increase closer to the 5%.
And Lisa, along with that, and I know I mentioned this to you before, you probably look into it a little more. There is a mobile chiropractic service, and they go around to different groups, you know, like one day a week or a couple days a month, and they'll bring their mobile service in right outside of town hall, and all during the day, people come in. And but I mean, it's something to look at to see what the cost is, how much does our insurance for each individual cover that, and what out of pocket our employee would have to pay. But there's so many health benefits for chiropractic. There's like plug for chiropractic. Okay. Certainly can.
Just a couple thoughts.
Mhm.
Competitiveness and retention are really the reasons why you're looking into this. And
Mhm.
from a competitiveness standpoint, I know the Department of Transportation, you have the health insurance when you retire. How are other counties and municipalities structured? Maybe as you have this discussion, share some of that info as well, because I would hate to
Okay.
have very talented people have the desire to leave and go work somewhere else just so that their retirement includes this benefit. So I just want to consider that, please.
Yeah, we'll
Thank you.
certainly look into that. I think, sort of at the same time, everybody was getting out of the retiree health insurance program years ago, just because it was so costly. But I think everybody is kind of slowly starting to dip back into it, but we'll find out what some surrounding agencies are doing this thing. Mhm.
Well, the couple of conversations that I've had with former retirees, being able to be on our plan, even paying for it themselves, it is a big win from what I've heard from them versus them having to go out and do something on their own. So, you know, I think as we look at that, if it's not harmful to us, from a monetary point of view, and to have employees in a position where they can know they can get insurance and know they can get it through the town is I think a win situation.
And that, I think
Even with them paying for it.
that was the point I was trying to make. I know there's not a direct correlation.
Yeah.
100% correlation between the size of the pool and the premium, but looking at it from the perspective of the individual retiree John Smith, whether he's in great health or terrible health, if he's part of a larger pool, even if he's paying 100%, it's less than if he's trying to get it on his own.
Very much so.
Okay, we'll just continue to study that and bring you some proposals, hopefully in the next few months. Next, Chris, I think is going to talk about some other benefits that we offer employees and maybe some other benefits that we can explore.
Yeah, just briefly, you guys have that? Yeah, the first one, if you will. So to let everyone know, just to sort of set the stage or to give a little context for what we're going to talk about or what I'm going to talk about for a minute. And that's looking at other avenues to help with retention. And I'll acknowledge up front, there's been plenty of conversation yesterday and even this morning. I know that cash is king and compensation is the biggest driver. So, but looking for other ways to enhance and do things that we can. First, I just want to list for you or show you this slide shows what our current employee benefits package is. And we do indeed feel it's a good package, you know, especially the insurance, the ratios and so forth, but everything, the retirement, a number of things there. So you can see that's just, again, to set the stage for this.
That was an additional
Yes.
benefit that you all approved.
Exactly. I think it's very generous as far as the number of holidays and so forth as well. So, recently went out to all the department managers of the town, for ideas, suggestions, feedback, both from them as managers and for their employees. Ideas of additional things that can be done for the sake of retention. Lenny, if you would go to the slide. So this is a comprehensive list. I do want to acknowledge the feedback and response was fantastic. Thanks to all of you who submitted suggestions. So I think the effort was made and got lots of feedback. Again, this is a comprehensive list. I'm not going to read through all of these, but there are a couple of things on here I'll just highlight. Number one, you'll see 3 of the items on here, no surprise, group health insurance for town retirees, increased leave time, and flexible work schedules. The 5 next to that is, all of those indicate that 5 different managers submitted those as suggestions. So obviously very much in employees' minds and have the potential to have a big impact. Also, I would point out there are 2 with asterisks next to them down towards the bottom: wellness and training programs and employee recognition. Those are things that in recent months we have ramped up significantly already. You know, things such as we brought back and reactivated the Live Well program. We have bio screenings coming up, bringing back after COVID, after a break due to COVID, benefits fair and so forth. So a number of initiatives are going on there. Likewise, employee recognition. We've got the Sweet Life Spotlight. Chris, PIO Chris, as we call him in HR, has ramped up things putting out there on social media and so forth, has been fantastic in getting word out. We're trying to recognize employees for their individual achievements, going above and beyond and that sort of thing. So lots of activity going on. And so finally, moving to the final slide, we have identified 6 of the suggestions from that comprehensive list that I just showed you on the previous slide as things that we would like to explore further. That is to do more research on, to start speccing out some ideas that would provide us the opportunity to possibly enact these things and structure them to where they would be value added and a benefit to the employees. I realize some are more significant than others, and it's a building block type of thing, looking for additional things, again, on top of compensation issues and so forth. And I will just identify briefly each one of these. Bereavement leave. Right now, as far as bereavement goes, that's covered by sick time, essentially. You wouldn't think this would be that big an issue, but it has come up fairly often. We get inquiries quite frequently, so this is significant to people. Tuition reimbursement. This is a big one and something you see commonly in various types of programs and so forth in many industries, many organizations. All major corporations. Yeah, lots of opportunity there and lots of interest there. This was suggested at number 3, a couple form, the leave buyback, referring to leave balances, specifically vacation at year end. And as most of you, I think, know, there is a limit to what you can carry over from year to year. So there were various suggestions such as paying that overage out to the person, that sort of thing. Number 4, working from home. Yes, absolutely.
You may know that there is a maximum amount of sick leave that you can accumulate on the book. So we hit December and all of a sudden everybody's got to use it. So
It's vacation. If I say sick, I apologize. That's supposed to be vacation.
vacation. So this is a way that, you know, perhaps somebody has 4 or 5 days over that 6 weeks and they don't necessarily want to take off, you know, the last week of December. Right. And we may need them to be here. So this is a way for them to not lose it essentially and get paid out for it.
One, I know with can't remember whether it was Midwest Vaco or Capstone, but you made that decision before the beginning of a year. So when you coming, we're going into our next year. And so in December, I would make a decision that if I had 4 weeks vacation, that I wanted to be paid for 1 or 2 of those weeks. So the company knew that I was going to take 2 weeks paid vacation, and I wanted to be paid for the other 2 weeks, and they spread that across 12 months. So there are many different ways to look at how you pay it, because you got 400 employees and they all get to the end of the year and they say, thank you very much, I'm not taking my vacation, I want you to pay me for a week. Well, where does that fit in my budget? So it's a way of,
Yeah.
of
Well, it would be like they were working, basically. So I don't know that it would it would be because we're just paying them for that day. So if they weren't there, we would be paying them for working. That makes sense.
not exactly, no.
Okay.
No, because
Vacation is vacation.
we're gonna pay them for the day they work, if they're not taking vacation, and we're gonna pay them again for the
Okay,
vacation.
okay, all right. I
Yes,
gotcha.
And I know Bosch, you could sell your sick leave back at the end of the year. The good thing about that is people don't take it. I went my first 7 years without a sick day. Sold them back, that was my Christmas fund. Vacation, we always saw as a right. At some point, but it also became a big liability, which is why we put the limit on it, because that goes against your
Yeah.
assets. So,
Do we
Okay.
also have a program in place right now for, donating sick leave to someone else?
And that's used very often. That's been a good benefit.
Yeah.
do they
So,
donate or sell it?
They donated.
Okay.
Number 5, group health insurance and retirement. We've discussed that pretty significantly already this morning. And then finally, pay referral incentive to employees who successfully recruit others to the town. That's one I think would be good. You see that in many organizations and many industries. And you can put things in place, specs that would protect the organization from it being abused. Put qualifiers like successfully completing probationary period, being in good standing, completing a first year, different things like that. So, again, all of these are just things we identified that we would like to explore further. Do some research, determine some proposed specs that would make it reasonable to implement, that would, again, be value added to the employees, but protect the organization as well, and hopefully improve retention that much more.
Because I don't know if it's 1 through 6 or order of priority or order of ease for doing. It's just, but the first 2 really jump out at me. And the bereavement leave, I do think is very important to people. I think we're learning that. The tuition reimbursement, and of course you know this professionally, it's a sticky wicket, and it has to be done right. I mean, some people in New York City associated with a former president are going to prison over things like this, just willy-nilly deciding that this person gets their tuition paid or their children's tuition paid, this one doesn't. And so the tax consequences of paying, or criminal consequences of paying some folks tuition, not others, is there. But and I've tangentially been involved with organizations where they did not have a particularly tight policy, and you never knew why some people got the tuition paid and others don't. But I think it's a great idea.
I assume it's paid after completion and with the passing grade.
Well, that's what, the thought process, again, to Mr. McIntosh's point is, you put specs on it such that they have to complete it, they do a passing grade or a certain grade, that it's legitimate in some way, whether it's pursuing a particular degree or a certification for their profession, different aspects of it, you spec it out such that it makes it legitimate, and so that it's not a wide open type of thing.
That's what this is about, number 6. That's already being used a lot here, a little bit. Using the money for the vacancies they have. And they have an officer, recruits out of an officer, the officer gets $1,000, and then the officer recruit gets $1,000 sign up.
Good deal, thanks.
Right now, we just get 2 days off. Something, I do get 2 days off to say, you recruit somebody, and they get to do it, right? They get to take those.
We used to have that tuition reimbursement. We have policy on that.
Yeah.
Well, now so you had to,
That's a good.
course you took had to have something to do with the job you had. You know, but there was a written policy on it in our handbook. And it worked. It encouraged people to go through. Yeah.
Yeah, it's important to a lot of people.
Yeah.
Yeah, again, I think just to follow up, that these are some ideas that we would like to continue to explore. Obviously, we have to fine tune an actual policy that will be bring back to you later. Consider.
Thank you.
Think this come and go, think it's better. Said the policy come and go.
They
down.
do, they do. Okay, where are we now? Oh, proposed amendments to purchasing policy. We were gonna talk about that. And I guess I'll talk about this one, but, department heads feel free to chime in, because this is actually something that's come to me more than once from the department heads, the fact that our minimum requirement, where there are no purchasing requirements, seems so low that it sort of stifles continuity and being able to purchase things. So we did a comparison of other municipalities to gauge where they were. And after looking at some other municipalities, we've got, you'll see that the next to the last item is where town of Somerville is currently. And then the bottom is what we're proposing. And of course, those are just some numbers that I put in there to start the discussion. And department heads, if you've got real world examples you'd like to share, you know, I think that would be helpful. But we've been at 2,500 for, gosh, probably the last 10 or 15 years, 15 years. Yeah. And that's a low threshold. When you're looking at something that's $2,700 and the time it takes to actually get additional quotes, it does tend to slow things down. So anyway, those numbers are on there to start the discussion and get your thoughts.
Is this, and these are budgeted items, I'm assuming.
Right, so anything that yes. of
Or
course,
somehow or other. They're in
right,
the
they're
budget.
either in somebody's operational budget, they're in somebody's capital budget. What comes back to council, even a budgeted item comes back to council if it's 25,000 and over. That's how we do it currently. The way the new proposed policy is written is that things that are budgeted would come back to council if it's 50,000 and above.
Go and do well.
What's that?
Go and do well.
Go and do well, okay. So, yeah, anything obviously that department heads that have the authority to spend at those levels are budgeted items. They're at some point in their either in their operational budget or in their capital budget. If not, those items do come back to council for those items that are not budgeted.
What about change orders and things like that?
Change orders, the way our policy is written currently, change orders do come back to council.
Because like Amy had one at 15,000.
Right.
on the thing, and she did bring it to me, and I'm like, we shouldn't pay that, we took it to GW, and he agreed,
Mhm.
and I think those things do need to at least be reviewed.
Yes, yes, and that's in the policy, and we're not proposing that come out of.
Well, I mean, by ordinance, and I'm not opposed to revisiting the ordinance, but I don't think we have. By ordinance, we're required, council is required to approve all change orders, no matter the amount, in advance. That was, I think that's an extreme policy. I think there should be some leeway, 2,500, 5,000, a percentage of the project, not to exceed a certain amount, but that was just one of those battles that this council wasn't willing to fall on our swords on.
I think I'd probably like a percentage.
A percentage up to a total amount.
Yeah, because if you get a $5 million project, you know there's gonna be.
Right, but that's why you would say, you know, up to 25,000 or something, no matter what the percentage of the project, if it's X, 20,000, 25,000, you gotta come to us. But these smaller projects where, you know, I mean, we've had a situation where people have been, our employees have been violating the ordinance. And on one level, I see the absurdity of coming back to council with such a small amount. On the other level, it's the law.
Just for everybody's information, a year or so ago, maybe longer than that, I had drafted a proposal to cover change orders up to $25,000. And if Russ had a contract, he could approve it, but he would have to get Lisa's okay to do it. And council would have to be notified that it was being done. Anything over $25,000 would have to come back to council, and I can resend that out to council.
You don't know, as a policy or ordinance amendment?
As an ordinance amendment.
I do think it needs to be a percentage of the project up to 25,000. Because obviously, if it's a $25,000 project and there's a $24,000 change order,
That's a problem.
that's an issue.
Yeah.
And there are,
Very gonna be changed. We don't have a party with that, we got to change orders. One thing to consider is, there are gonna be change orders to our benefit, we change orders against this. So you want to see the change order to our benefit, you want to hear about that, or you can stop the contract and say stop. And
No, to our benefit, if you don't want an attaboy, you don't have to know.
I don't have the ordinance in front of me. I know it's some extreme language, and that was pointed out when we voted on it. Like I said, it was just not. There was a lot going on during those days.
I can, but it's.
That's not what I'm talking about. It was a battle picking.
Yeah, I agree, Bill. I think we need to revisit that.
Okay.
And Russ, you might mention also, I think this really came to light back on the Bears Bluff extension. And y'all were out there and ran into some wiring problems going under Berlin G in 17A to get, and they were gonna have to shut down, demobilize and charge us for remobilizing to come back. And it would have cost us way more probably than the change order, and it was something that had to be done. So it's, you need to keep that in mind too.
If Lisa can spend up to $25,000 without our approval, then why can't she just approve the $25,000 change order?
Because it would come out of her budget. That's I'm answering for her.
The way the ordinance is written now, she can't.
Right, the way it's written.
It's a
now.
bad order.
I know, but that's why I'm saying, so why don't we change the ordinance?
I think we've been of a mind to do it. from like the month after that ordinance was
Don't have
written.
a percentage on it. I mean, if it's 25,000, it's 25. If it's 24, and why put a percentage on it? You still can spend up to 25,000. Just leave it at 25,000, period. The administrator can approve it up to 25,000. She's gonna let us know, and she's sure not gonna spend it illegally. So if Russ gets a change order and it's $24,650, and she's got to come before us because of a percentage factor, that's crazy.
I think what we'll do, Mayor, since it sounds like you all are of a mind to look at amending the ordinance, we'll look at amending that and bring it back to you, and we'll have some language there that will allow for perhaps a certain dollar amount that I could approve, and then perhaps a percentage amount of, depending on the contract that we can.
Yeah, I can understand the
Okay.
percentage amount of it, over 25,000.
Yeah.
You know, but
Okay.
25 and under, you got the authority. If I come to you and the department head comes to you and he wants, then it's legitimate, and it's a $25,000 purchase, you can approve it. I don't know why in the world we have to. So don't use anything else as long as it's under 25,000.
So we're gonna have two things. We're gonna have a purchasing policy, and we're gonna have a proposed revision to the ordinance for change orders on
Yes,
open
because-
contracts.
And yes, because,
Okay.
and all of that is contained within the purchasing ordinance. So we'll look at these numbers, changing the threshold, and then that paragraph that deals specifically with change orders, we'll reword that and bring that back to you. Okay, any other questions about the purchasing? Okay, so now we have open discussion for council. Do we need a break, or are y'all ready to roll right into that? Okay, sounds like we're ready to roll into it.
Need a break?
I don't think so, Mayor.
Okay.
I don't think so. All right.
Discussion.
So under open discussion, we were asked to add first reading of an ordinance to partially rescind the 2022 property tax increase in the town of Somerville.
Mr. Mayor, I would move first reading of an ordinance to partially rescind the property tax increase from last year. The ordinance is not in the packet, but it was provided to everyone. Decrease millage by, I don't think it's.
I think it's in the back.
Okay, yeah. It would decrease a property tax millage from 4 mills, which we increased by 6.5 mills last year. That motion.
Okay, we need to call for a second.
We have a second on that. Bill's motion. Not the motion fails.
Be back next month with another one.
Hey, no, look.
Mr.
Never.
Mayor, since it's open discussion now, since the motion failed, I just wanted to let all of the staff know how much I appreciate the work you put into this retreat, what you do for our town and our citizens, and the leadership that you guys show each and every day. It is appreciated. It's noticed. We have a first-class municipality, and it's because of our people. So thank you.
Same goes here. Thank you.
Just an idea to throw out that somebody gave me that I think it's a good idea, that Lisa gets a pool of money out of that 10% to give it to our directors. And I don't even know if we have to decide how much that is. That takes that onus away and they'll all get a raise. We don't need directors foregoing raises. It's a good idea.
And I wanted to bring up, Lisa and I had a conversation. It was at least a month ago now, just doing some research on the equipment that is needed to charge for parking for only special events, sort of like Flower Town. Flower Town. Because you had mentioned that you actually have to purchase something. Because the one time you guys did that, it was a fiasco. Donna was out there.
Right,
trying
we
to-
actually had people out there trying to.
Yeah, and you didn't know how many parking spots there
Right,
were, or
yeah.
what was available, or whatever.
Yeah.
But at least doing the research of how much something would cost. And then at least we would know for the future and whether we'd want to do it or not, just for special events only. To recoup some of our money for the maintenance of the parking garage at least. So.
I think it's a good idea. I've been trying to talk about it for a while. And it's almost the exact opposite of what some other municipalities do that charge through the nose for parking on a regular basis. But their parking fees are so exorbitant that when they have a special event that they want people at, they actually reduce the parking. I'm thinking of mainly of City of Charleston, the City of North Charleston, the two, that they instead of paying the exorbitant hourly rates, they put people out there collecting cash or running squares for a $5 event parking. You're actually paying less when you're at the event, but we are offering free parking on a day-to-day basis, the exact opposite of North Charleston and Charleston. On most things, I think we should do the opposite of North Charleston and Charleston. But for these events downtown, I mean, thinking obviously of Flower Town Festival, but there are others, that those parking spaces are premium. And the people would pay $10, $20 to park in that parking garage for the day. And as Kimma says, it's an opportunity for us to take advantage of that and pay for maintaining the garage and allow us to continue free parking Monday through Friday, or 7 days a week while our businesses are open.
Well, since I've already been gored on this, I will not gore myself again.
Oh, go ahead.
But I would say that the questions, the concerns we had last time were mainly from our merchants who were downtown. How do you deal with the merchants during Flower Town Festival who are still open, still run their businesses, and their patrons and their workers are coming and they're using the garage as well? So, I mean, that was the blow up last time, and which we backed away from. So I just think I think it's a good idea, it's a way to raise money, it's a way to take care of the garage. I think we just have to figure out how do we manage through that part of what would happen during such an event.
Yeah, for employees, we could give them passes.
I didn't ask us to get an answer,
But
I'm just saying, before we do something, I think we better figure out how we deal with that.
But the blow up was for charging for parking day in and day out.
Yeah,
And
well, charging for parking is charging for parking.
I think that you charge 4 or 5 events a year, charging particularly for those events that happen after hours is very different.
Well, and as long as merchants understand that, if I were presenting it, I would be saying, we're doing this to help pay for the garage that we're giving you for free the rest of the year. You're gonna have to figure out how to deal with these 15 days a year or whatever it is.
The example I would use is the city of Clemson. If you're in their parking garage, I think, because it's not Charleston or Charleston, I think it's like 50 cents an hour or something, except for 7 Saturdays out of the year, it's $40 for the day. And that just makes sense.
Actually, Russ and I met with one particular business owner, but also had some vocal input from some other business owners that they were pretty much okay with special events that they charge for parking. Because they understand our circumstance also.
The other
To
thing.
your
is-
point,
yeah,
it'd be good to engage Dream in the discussion.
Yes.
For sure.
definitely.
Yeah,
I mean,
but it makes sense.
the unfortunate thing is that many of our merchants close down during Fourth of Firetown Festival. They find that it's detrimental to their businesses.
Got laws and got in public, the whole thing would have to shut down, they will just keep down total. So. Again, it's a good idea today, but it'd be a good idea next month.
Well, I think if you did, if you literally did it 5 or 6 times a year, I don't think you buy any equipment. I think you pay somebody $15 an hour to collect the money.
And it gotta be, I think we'd have to put specificity to what events, date, that type of stuff. So everybody knows it in advance. But I think we need to find a way to upkeep the garage, and this seems a fair, reasonable way.
We just need to find a way to keep track of parking spaces, even if it's plus minus, so.
Watch. Or something.
Well, you have to make it go backwards.
True, that's true. He watches.
One in each hand.
It gotta be.
Anything else?
Executive session.
I think everybody's done, Mayor.
I need to make a motion to go into executive session.
Again, that would probably be a good idea.
I'll second that, make a motion. We have one.
Well, I think I got a list of things according to Mr. Parker, and he's right.
This
Uh,
Thornton has it this time?